If you don't believe that it is possible to lack nothing from God, well, think of David, who wrote this psalm. He was chased by years by King Saul. He had to hide in caves. He had to side with the enemy Philistines. Later in his life, he was hounded by his own son Absalom in a power struggle for the national leadership. Yet David was the one who wrote this psalm. So in the middle of all that running and struggle, God the shepherd showed his concern and love and care for David and gave him rest in the middle of all those struggles, so he could confidently sing, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." God's goal as our shepherd is to lead us to his rest, to lie down in green pastures and beside quiet waters, and to refresh our soul in him. Imagine a place, well, you don't have to imagine it. Where is a place that you have visited which has quiet waters and green pastures and flowing river, where you felt deep serenity and peace? Can you think of a place like that you've been to, maybe on holidays? Well, that place is just a tiny sense, or gives you a tiny sense of the rest that God gives us. What are sheep like, though? What happens to them? Well, they can get irritated. They get burrs in their wool. They have, they get the dags on the back of their tails. They get ticks, especially. When sheep lie down, and I didn't really know this until a few years ago, if they're not careful, they actually will roll over too far as they lose their centre of gravity. And if they roll too far, they can't actually get back up again. So they actually need to be rolled over by somebody else, like their owner, or else they will die. Even in the midst of all of these hazards, God is the great shepherd and takes care of his sheep, and he offers you and me that rest. It's not the kind of rest you get after a hard day where you sit in the chair at the end and put your feet up and relax. It's actually way more satisfying than that. When your soul is at rest and at peace and untroubled, no matter what is happening above and outside of yourself, well, that's the sense of the rest and peace of God. Peter calls it in 1 Peter 1, verse 8, the inexpressible glorious joy that we have in Christ, even through all the sufferings and trials we go through in life. This rest and peace and inexpressible glorious joy comes from God, our great shepherd. What about the second point? For his name's sake. God guides you and me along right paths for his name's sake. Sheep can easily head into danger without even knowing it. Isaiah put it very well when he said this, "We like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned his own way." The problem is when we do that, we run away from our shepherd. And when we do things our own way, we always go to the poorer grass, don't we? The worst pool of water to drink from, the most dangerous, the most silly path, thinking it's the better path than God's. And then we blame God for his lack of care for us. Why aren't you here for me, God? We can be silly sheep sometimes, can't we? Proverbs 16:25 says, "There is a way that seems to be right, but in the end leads to death." Now, God knows the dangers we sheep face because he's already been down the path of humanity himself by sending his son Jesus to live amongst us. Jesus understands the risks a sheep goes through. He's seen and he's experienced the difficulties of life. The floods, the rock slides, the dangerous plants, the running away. He's seen it all and now has that great experience as the Good Shepherd. And even though we may walk in the darkest valley, the psalm says, those really dark moments of life when it gets really scary and bleak, well, God says he leads us along the right paths in those valleys too. He's travelled that dark valley of death before us. God knows where the water is, even in that valley, and the best plants to survive. God is with us in our worst distress, even in our burnout, even in the times we're not sure how much money's left, even when we don't have a job and we need one, even when we're looking for somewhere to live. God does this all for his own name's sake.